Hi, I'm Paul Edwards. I'm the university's grounds manager, responsible for the upkeep of the grounds at Singleton campus and the Bay campus, and a small part of Hendref Island as well. Well, a lot of it's a hangover from as being part of the estate of Singleton. Obviously, Vivian's had the Abbey. There was a lot of planting done at the time. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but the university is set in Singleton Park. But that said, a lot of the trees, particularly in the Botanical Garden, were planted specifically for the Botanical Garden. Obviously, a lot of the older trees were part of the old Vivian estate. Yes, there were adders. Prior to that, it's called the Reptilary, because originally there were tortoises in there. Unfortunately, when the import of tortoises ceased, they disappeared more or less overnight, which is really sad because there were some quite big ones in there. Following that then, it was used for breeding adders, believe it or not. The gentleman's name escapes me, but it was basically carrying out a breeding program to increase the numbers of adders on the Gower Peninsula. So a lot of the stone obelisks we've got there, on a nice warm morning, they'd all be there basking on the rocks, warming themselves up. And there was a perimeter perspex barrier to stop them getting out. And yeah, he used to collect them up and then take them down the Gower on his motorbike, in a top box on his motorbike, which yeah, I always wondered if he had an accident and that would be really great, you know. Don't open the box, you know. But yeah, it's interesting. It's still called the Reptilary. I've never, you know, it's still mentioned, you know, but we've got no reptiles on it. We've got amphibians, we've got newts in there. The occasional frog. We don't have many frogs for some reason. I don't really know why, but we do get the newts in there. We put a little bridge there as well because hedgehogs like going across it. I think they're trying to get a drink, but they just fall in. But at least they've got a bridge now, so they can do a lap and then get out, you know.
So you've actually got a hedgehog bridge?
We've got a hedgehog bridge, yeah. We did have, a couple of years back, we had a mink, believe it or not. And he was living in Vivian Tower Pool for some reason. And we got some really good photographs of him. But beautiful looking animal, but an absolute thug when it comes to everything and anything, yeah.
So to me, that's actually quite a surprising amount of wildlife to support on campus here.
It is a lot. I mean, we've got, with the Botanical Garden pool, the ornamental pool, that's a bone of contention quite a bit as well. It's not a natural pool, it's an ornamental pool, which is why we have put things like blue wharf and koi in there before. To be honest, there's just a lot of them still left in there. We lost a lot to gulls, but not as many as we would in the Vivian Tower because they just don't like the tree cover. Apparently we've got otters as well, which use the stream as a bit of a connecting link between parks. The ornamental pool is, to me, defined as an ornamental pool because it's concrete lined, it's not clay lined. So
would that be a kind of landscaping definition?
It's a landscaping definition, as in, I mean, there's some school of thoughts that say we should only put native species in there. You know, bream, rudd, you know, trout even, you know. But you can't see them. And they are predated, which they hide. Right. The whole point of it being an ornamental pool is you put ornamental fish in so you can see them. And again, from a welfare point of view as well, people love to see the fish. I mean, I could tell you, there's eels in there, there's no surprise. There's bream in there, but you can't see them. You just got to take my word for it. But with the ornamental fish, you can see them, you know. Broadly speaking, from a grounds management point of view, nothing leaves the site. So everything that gets produced in the course of maintaining the grounds, we either upcycle it or recycle it or compost it. The only exception you get are things like bricks or big bits of metal, and then that goes off the site. But everything else, as it deteriorates or we have to clear it, we compost it, mulch it, or make habitat piles, or you know, or just try and utilize it into the landscape. So nothing from a carbon footprint perspective, you know, nothing leaves. It stays here. So it's dare I say, it's pretty self-sustaining in that respect. We don't buy compost, we don't buy mulch. You know, we chip our own branches to use that as a mulch for moisture retention and weed suppression. So we're not using as much chemicals to suppress the weeds. It works really well. You know, we've got a bit of an issue with excuse me, with allium, which is everywhere. It's a real invasive. It's a pretty thing, but in a botanical garden, there's areas that it really shouldn't be. So what we've done in the past, continue to do actually, is use cardboard, a couple of layers of cardboard. Then we cover that with well-rotted leaf mould, and it works. It cooks it, deprives it of light long enough. The bulbs hate it and they just rot. And we can just dig straight through the cardboard and the leaf mould as if it wasn't there. Then when we do plant it up, I can show you examples of that when we walk down there later. But it works really well.
So we just compassed this area that was actually a pine.
That's a pinetum. Yeah. Well, yes.
So this is a pinetum.
Pinetum.
Pine and coniferous species.
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting because the pinetum leads on to what was called the Bog Garden, which we didn't know about until we looked at the old map, which was in the information point in the pergola, which you can have a look at after if you want to do it. It literally was falling apart, so we managed to scan it so we know what the garden should have looked like if it was completed, but then it transpired that it wasn't completed because the Bog Garden wasn't created. But we've done that subsequently. We've put a couple of weirs in, made from oak. An oak had to come down at the Abbey. It was dead as a doornail. So we used the oak then to form the weirs to back the stream up to make it more boggy. So it's really wet, yeah. Yeah, it's great. It's what we've cut a section into the log then, which you can take out like a plug, so it lowers the level, so we can get a lot of the build-up of leaf litter every year, which we did just before Christmas. It's full of invertebrates. Everything's just, we leave it there for a while for it to give them a chance to wriggle back in, and then we put it behind the bamboo sort of reinforcements we've put there along the stream side, and the bamboo was harvested from bamboo we've got on campus, because bamboo's quite invasive anyway. So we cut that, stored it, dried it, and now it's forming like a wicker basket edge to the stream with the silt behind it, and that's where that's where our resident kingfisher likes to perch then on the bridge and just pick off the sticklebacks, and it can be booked as an outdoor learning space, and they do use it, but I mean, we've got plans for possibly installing things like a pizza oven in the future as well, just to get people down.
Be able to come and use that and
yeah,
use a pizza
yeah, and again with wood that we've got from site as well, So
we're going to wander through our outdoor classroom and out to the tree circle.
There you go. Again, this is part of the same thing we do with trees that do have to be taken down. These were dead; they weren't just felled, but we put them there and put a bit of a bank there as well. It's full of bulbs and all kinds of native wildflowers, and it's to try and dampen the road traffic sound a little bit. It does actually, even when things are in leaf, it does cut the noise down a little bit. That's the only sort of downside is the noise, but we've got a circle of conifers on the end, and a couple of them became damaged in high winds, and because it's quite a popular area now, if we've got anything like that that's potentially dangerous, we've got to take it out or do work on it. If it's in the middle of nowhere, we leave it. It's because it's a double-edged sword really, because this is such a popular area. We've got to make sure they're safe, so that one had to be taken out. But we just formed it into a circle of logs then, and yeah, I was surprised how popular it is, With the meadow itself, we used to mow it regularly as part of the cutting regime on the rest of the campus, but we don't now, we just let it go. But what we do, you can just about make it out, is we cut paths through the meadow then. We change that every year. And we've got part of the centenary oak project we did as well. We've got 25 more oaks planted here, 25 oaks at the bay as well. And they've been left alone, to be fair. They're doing quite well. So So we're on the Botanical Garden meadow, facing the Botanical Gardens, and we've got what we call the Woodland Walk, or the Woodland Spur. It's completely unnatural. It's not following any contours naturally. It's just quite a large woodland bank. Now, if it was formed around the time that Wallace was constructed, or the Botanical Garden was constructed, it would make perfect sense that perhaps they've pushed out all the footings from the building and it's ended up here, so they've formed a bank. The only thing that doesn't make sense is the age of the trees that are growing on it, and they're a lot older than the building. So I just can't understand. You've got a lot of really mature oaks there that are a hell of a lot older than the building. The bank was there first, and every now and again we've got a fox set both ends of it. When the fox is, because it basically it's mostly sand, when it does have little cave-ins, the fox digs it out, and he'll dig out big lumps of slag from smelting ironworks. What's that doing there? We've got the yew hedge, and the only other yews we've got an Irish yew just on the end of Wallace, or NSB as it used to be called, and the only other yew we've got then is up at the Abbey. Well, it's unusual, as in it's obviously really old, but I don't know why it is where it is. It's not shielding anything unsightly. It's not as if there's a transformer behind it or a sewage farm or anything. It's beautiful, you know. It's actually, oh my goodness, I would say that's more or less half the height it was.
Wow, okay.
We cut the top of it 20 years ago to make it more manageable. It's still a bit of a pain to cut, but it's a beautiful feature. But as to why it's there, and it's obviously it's been planted as a hedge. If you get in amongst it, has been staggered. It's been planted perfectly, and it's also following the same contours as the actual perimeter fence. Could have been. Yeah, it could have been. You know, I mean, literally where the yew hedge terminates, there used to be gate columns, and the university used to have huge gates there, and it was literally closed.
Grand entrance.
Well, massive, yeah, and they would close it, and when the place was on a weekend, it was closed. You know.
Wow, okay. But presumably again, it's another really useful habitat patch. Are there birds nesting?
Oh, it's full. Yeah, it's full, and we do get every time we trim it, or that time of year, we get inquiries from cancer research as well. Something to do with the actual leaves of it.
The leaves of the yew.
Of the yew, yeah.
Research.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we gather them up and they collect them and then take them away and they, yeah.
To use for research.
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of other unis get that sort of request as well. So I don't know what they're actually using it for, but
I mean, so many of.
I'm not a massive fan of the holm oak. It's a beautiful tree. It's not a native, as you know.
Yeah.
But this one behind us, for instance, it's had quite a lot of crown reduction because it was coming top heavy, and it's actually got a split right up the middle. You can actually see the light shining through it. But as long as we keep the weight down off the crowns, and it is where it is, it's perfectly safe.
So you'll kind of manage its crown to make sure it's not putting too much weight
Yes.
on the split that might
Yes.
be dangerous.
Yeah, and it's we've got one here, and we've got one then at the main entrance we had to do some work on last year. But yeah, again, it's a lot of nests in it, a lot of cavities in it, but yeah, it you know, it's a tough tree, quite fast growing compared to our own native species, and it's part of the park at the end of the day. You know, it's part of the estate.
That are in this stretch of meadow.
Well, again, you've got stands of poplar. We've got the conifers again. Again, these have had a bit of a hard time, as you can see. This is why we had to make the circle of them down there. Is they tend to whip after a while and peel off like bananas.
Yeah. So when the wind gets them, they kind of sway and you kind of.
And they'll just peel.
whip them.
Yeah, and that's what that one's done there. You know, it's again, if this was in the middle of the car park or near the halls of residence, they'd have to be taken out.
Right. But here, if they fall,
Yeah,
you know.
we let them do their own thing. You know, yeah.
And poplar, I know, is particularly good at likes to lose branches.
It does, yeah. We've got a really large one at the end. We've got one quite big at the end of Wallace. Well, it's a good comparison, actually. The one in the Botanical Garden, we've done hardly any pollarding on it because the risk is low because there's not many people footfall's quite low underneath it. But then we've got one on the end of the Wallace building, just by the bus stop, by Grove. And we have to heavy pollard that one quite regularly because, as you say, it doesn't give you any, it doesn't even have to be windy.
Yeah.
And bang, it'll just drop one, you know. Again, a really fast growing tree. It's interesting because the Pinetum leads on to what was called the Bog Garden, which we didn't know about until we looked at the old map, which was in the information point in the pergola, which you can have a look at after if you want to. It literally was falling apart, so we managed to scan it so we know what the garden should have looked like if it was completed, but then it transpired that it wasn't completed because the Bog Garden wasn't created. But we've done that subsequently. We've put a couple of weirs in, made from oak. An oak had to come down at the Abbey. It was dead as a doornail. So we used the oak then to form the weirs to back the stream up to make it more boggy.
So you've got a wetland area
So it's really wet, yeah. Yeah, it's great. It's what we've cut a section into the log then, which you can take out like a plug, so it lowers the level, so we can get a lot of the build-up of leaf litter every year, which we did just before Christmas. Because they're full of invertebrates, everything's just, we leave it there for a while for it to give them a chance to wriggle back in. And then we put it behind the bamboo sort of reinforcements we've put there along the stream side, and the bamboo was harvested from bamboo we've got on campus, because bamboo's quite invasive anyway, so we cut that, stored it, dried it, and now it's forming like a wicker basket edge to the stream with the silt behind it. It's a red oak. It's part of the old estate. There's one in the background as well. It's a slightly bigger. We've had quite a lot of work done on this one. Again, it's because of where it is when we're standing now. There's paths right the way around it and everything. And it's usually very popular with the Evening Post as well. As soon as the crocuses come out, it's textbook. And it's nicely balanced as well. We've, like I said, we've had quite a lot of work done to it in the past. Again, oak being oak, it produces dead spurs as what it does, but it's because of where it is. Even around us now we've got twigs. There was, yeah. It was a shame actually, because we had to take it down because the actual branch was becoming dangerous. But it used to weep from that point down to more or less where we're standing now. And there was a fissure in the actual branch itself, and a holly was growing in it. Holly tree, and it was it's quite a substantial tree. So it looked like the oak was actually sort of just holding this tree there. It was a real shame, but we had to take it out because the branch had become unstable. When we actually cut the branch lengthways, the root system had actually, it was quite a substantial tree. We've had instances when we've done work on trees before, and there's obviously a cavity in the tree that you're not aware of, and when you are actually starting to take a damaged limb out, gallons of stagnant water just come, and a lot, gallons and gallons of water, because you've obviously gone into the cavity. But it's
insects and lichens.
Oh yeah, it's special. The smell is great. Yeah. One of the things we haven't got a problem with now, we did a couple of years back, was grey squirrels. Apparently they reach a sort of population maximum and then they move on, or wasn't enough to sustain them, but the place was alive with squirrels. The downside was the aces got a hammering because of the bark, and it was only till a couple of years later then a lot of the beech trees were suffering. We couldn't understand, a lot of branches were dead and the trees were clearly under a lot of stress, but looking at it from the ground, it was fine. It was no problem at all until you get up the tree and there wasn't a square inch of branch that hadn't been stripped.
The squirrels were just eating the living cambium along the
yeah, and they don't like eating upside down. So from underneath, from underneath the branch is fine, but on the top, completely stripped. It's stark. Underneath, you'd never guess. But when you get up into the tree, the whole thing had been stripped completely. But we've still got grey squirrels, but not as many as we did have, thank goodness. Yeah, it's very, very popular with the jackdaw and squirrel population. especially that cavity there. What you'll see quite often is the jackdaws will claim it, or the squirrels will claim it and get all their nesting material in there, and then as soon as they go, your squirrel will go in there and just chuck it all out and then sort of squat basically, and then it gets quite heated. I think the squirrels won last year, but it's a beautiful old tree. It's you can see it's fused together. We've deliberately not done a lot of work on it because the footfall's quite low this side. The other side is sound because there's a path there. But again, sometimes it's the tree's healthy. There's no bracket fungus on it or anything. And yes, there are some dead spurs there, but again, because the footfall's quite low, we've left it. Well, it's had a lot of work done in the past, long before my time, because you see there's been quite some big limbs being taken off. Even the one facing us, you can see it's like a circle. That would have been a limb at one time. So it has been managed in the past, but I would say not for at least 40, maybe 50 years. So it's done its own thing. It's done what it would do if it wasn't managed. So yes, you've got there's some that are causing some concern. You've got quite a big limb torn off there. Again, as I was saying before, we don't know how far back that decay has gone, and that'll usually manifest itself because the limbs beyond that then the leaves will start going a bit earlier. Obviously it's under stress. We can take some of the weight off it, but again, I'm loath to do it because it's good to have an example of an unmolested, if that's the right word, oak tree. Yeah. That's what it's supposed to look like, you know. They never grow the way you think they would. I mean, it'll just go off at a complete tangent, and you think, well, why is it? It just does. Yeah. You know, there's no rhyme or reason to it, you know. And that's the appeal, I think.
So we're just going to introduce one of the more ornamental trees, which is a cherry tree that's right in front of the Abbey. And it's a really nice example of the management that goes into the tree estate, really. So you can see there's a paler limb that's been grafted onto the main cherry tree. And that's where somebody grafted two species and two individual trees together. And what's really lovely is one of these limbs is a white cherry tree and one's a pink cherry tree. So pop round here if you're here in the springtime, if you're back on campus, and have a look, because you'll see this beautiful little tree has two different coloured blossoms on it because of the way that it's been managed by the grounds staff. So as we look at the Abbey Meadow, we can see there's actually several of these real champion trees on it. You can see 3 or 4 of these huge majestic oaks that form such an important part of the landscape. And we're able to see them from a long way away, and they form a really important part of what the university is. They're identifiable parts of it. And you get a sense of the people, the Vivians who designed this campus, the way they allowed big, majestic parkland trees to form part of the landscape, and they remain there now. But hopefully this video has given you a bit of an idea of quite what a job it is to manage them. It's not a simple task.
It's the biggest, certainly. As you can see, the girth of it is impressive. It's got a colony of pipistrelle bats in it as well, which they regularly do bat walks with a sonic listening to them, so it's got a healthy colony of pipistrelles in there. And we're hoping to enter it as a champion tree in the UK database. certainly the biggest one I've seen. Again, it's a very misleading sort of tree to look at. Yes, it's a big tree, but it's incredibly dense, heavy wood. This is a holm oak. It drops leaves all year round. It's a pain to keep the paths and roads clear, but it's a small price to pay because it's such a beautiful looking tree. You can see behind me, it's amazing that the weight of the tree, if you've got that big limb behind me, if you try to recreate that and make it stay there, it would fall over. Now you couldn't replicate that. If you tried to do it, it'd just fall off. And it's perfectly healthy, it's perfectly happy like that. Loads of cavities in it. We do get it inspected. It's sort of biannually, and it's perfectly healthy. You know, I know a bit of a cliche, but if you absolutely have to take a tree out, then you better have a really good reason for it. You know, work around it. Is that it is literally a landmark. If you know that tree, if I showed you a photograph of that tree, you say, I don't know where that is. That's what I love about it. It's unique.